Right, we are live. We are live. We are live. Welcome to the You Heard Me podcast with Hope Gables Canine. And we're just going to do our double check and just make sure that we are officially live. And we are. We are live on our YouTube channel. So, welcome everybody. Welcome to the You Heard Me podcast again with Hope Gables Canine. We are a behavior modification company based here in Fairfield County, Connecticut. And this is my beautiful wife, Alyssa.
Hi.
All right. There you go. Some intro there. All right. So we are going to get into it. So podcast episode number two. Number 2. Oh my God.
Did you almost
So
forget?
I was actually thinking about this. I was thinking about this the other day, how we're never going to have an episode 1 ever again, which is sad. Okay. But that's okay. We're going to have many episodes. And also what's also very interesting is I think that's the biggest one. I actually got sad today because it felt really, the first episode was just like a culmination of years of preparing for this. And I was like, I kind of got a little somber today because I'm like, we're not going to have a first episode again, but we're going to have many, many episodes, and they're actually going to be better than the first episode because there were things that I noticed that I didn't like about certain things I was doing that I'm going to try to correct. Did you notice anything that you wanted to correct?
Yeah, let's get into it.
All right. So she's keeping me on track. I see that we have people joining, which is great. As a reminder, for those of you that haven't tuned in or didn't tune into the first episode, there is going to be a format that we're going to keep for this podcast. So in the beginning, there's always going to be a lead-in topic. I'm going to do my best to take a poll leading up to the week's podcast and let you decide what that topic is going to be. The particular topic that our audience rather chose was the difference between behavior modification and basic obedience or obedience training. So we're going to get into that topic, and I'm going to just dive into some of those details, and then we're going to take your questions. We're always going to also ask for questions on our Instagram leading up to the podcast. You can DM us a question. You can comment a question on one of our posts. And also, we're going to take questions live as well. And so to take questions live for all of you that are new to YouTube streaming, we were at a point in time, you have to log in with I think it's your Gmail email account, and that will allow you to post questions in the chat. Okay. So I think we got some feedback last week where people didn't know how to submit questions. So that's how you have to log into your Gmail. It should allow you to submit questions in the chat. So we will be monitoring the chat during the podcast, and we will be answering all of your questions. Alyssa has a list of questions as well that we've gathered earlier in the week, and that's going to be the format. So let's dive right into it. So the topic that we're going to talk about in the lead in here is the difference between behavior modification and obedience training. Okay. Now there are a lot of details here, so I'm going to try to give it broad strokes because we could talk about this for 2 hours. Well, I certainly could talk about this for 2 hours.
We know.
We all know that. Thank you. All right. So what is the ultimate difference between behavior modification and obedience training? And there's some similarities. And so let's get into it. So obedience training is exactly what it sounds like, right? You're teaching your dog commands: down, sit, come, place, etc. Okay. So you're teaching your dog a slew of commands to help them be more reliable in the moments where you need them to be reliable. Now, I've worked with highly obedient dogs that were a mess behaviorally, okay? And there are other trainers that also have as well. The reason being that just knowing a command, down, place, recall, the come command, doesn't actually change the mindset of the dog. Okay, so let me give you an example. You have a dog or let's just take an individual, anybody, all right, who has a dog that's, let's just take resource guarding because that's what we posted about on our Instagram, and that's, comes to mind, right? So let's just take resource guarding, or it could be anything. Let's take resource guarding, for instance, okay? Just knowing how to come when called, or how to go into a down, or how to go to place isn't a solve for the resource guarding itself. Yes, you can use obedience to help solve the issue, but it's not actually teaching the dog that resource guarding is something to not be doing, okay? So just sending your dog to place to not guard is just avoiding the issue. Just like how putting a dog in a sit to stop them from jumping at the doorway is you're not getting to the root of the issue. Okay. So hopefully that helps in terms of, the differences between the two. However, with that said, you can correct, let's just take jumping, for instance. That's a common one that almost everybody has probably dealt with their dogs. Okay. Let's just take something as simple as jumping. Dog jumps. All right. Asking them to sit to mitigate the jump isn't teaching them that the jumping is not okay. All right. That has to be corrected for the dog to understand that jumping is not okay. All right. And you're going to come across a lot of videos and a lot of people that are going to tell you, well, just teach a sit so your dog doesn't jump anymore. Okay. The problem with that is it's not reliable and it's not practical and it's not realistic. Okay. Because when you have a dog at the front door and their brain is on fire and you're asking them to sit, it doesn't actually teach that jumping is not okay. Okay. Now, oh, Nick, it's just jumping. No, it's not just jumping. How about your 90-year-old grandmother that comes to the door? It's the holidays. She's struggling to get up the stairs and you have I don't care what the size of the dog is, by the way, because you could trip over a 5-pound dog. Okay. I understand that, sometimes we like to make excuses and I get it, but somebody could get hurt. Okay. Not all the time and certainly not every day. All right. Most jumping is harmless and I will admit that, but sometimes it's not. And so just teaching a sit is not an appropriate solve for that behavior. So behavior modification, although jumping necessarily isn't really a behavior issue per se. When I think of behavior issue, I think of resource guarding. I think of reactivity. I think of all of that, right? Let's take reactivity, a reactive dog, a dog that's lunging towards dogs. And again, Alyssa and I dealt with this with Layla, our dog. Let's take reactivity, a dog that's lunging towards other dogs. They have an aversion, they're fearful, whatever the emotional driver is, okay? Just teaching a heel is not going to solve the reactivity. And this is the difference between teaching an obedience command and actually getting to the mindset of the dog, okay? At some point, okay, you're going to have to tell your dog that that's not an okay behavior. At some point, you're going to have to say, I don't want you to fixate on other dogs, because what does fixating on other dogs lead to? It leads to barking. It leads to lunging, okay? And I don't want you to explode. And so for reactivity, for instance, when we deal a lot with reactivity, the goal is to stop the fixation pattern. How do you stop it? You correct it. How do you correct it? We correct it with an e-collar. It works very well. Okay. Dog starts staring at another dog. No, tap the button. Dog stops staring. You're done. You keep moving. You walk by the dog. Okay. I'm oversimplifying it because sometimes you have to do it over and over and over again for the dog to just be like, okay, I'm not going to look at other dogs. All right. That's getting to the mindset of the dog. That is saying to the dog, I don't like that behavior and I'm going to stop anything that leads to that behavior. Okay. Now, where does the heel come in? And this is where behavior modification and obedience actually complement each other. Okay. You can't just correct fixation if your dog is at the end of the leash, 6 foot in front of you. Okay. You need your dog to, by your side so that you can see what they're doing, right? You can see that they're fixating so you can correct it. So yes, you're going to use their obedience. You're going to use the heel command to help aid you in changing the mindset of the dog, but the command itself is not actually getting to the mindset of the dog. Okay. Teaching heel, just like teaching sit to stop jumping, is not going to solve reactivity, which is a big behavior issue. So that is sort of broad strokes. There's a lot of nuances in that, and I'm going to turn it over to Alyssa. She's usually good about keeping me honest, but was that a pretty good general overview of how they complement each other and how they're different?
Yes. Yes.
Do I get a stamp of approval?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Sounds great. All right. Well, look, we're going to keep moving, right? So the goal for this podcast is to keep the ball rolling. Just going to give me one moment. If Vitamin Water wants to sponsor the First Dog Training Podcast,
okay.
I wouldn't mind that. I've also been talking all day, so bear with me. I brought some
we had two go homes today.
Yes. Well, we had 2 dogs going home.
To the same house.
From the same house. Yes. So we take in multiple dogs from households as well. So it's not just one dog. And it goes very well. They did phenomenal. I could not be happier. All right, so keep going. So what I'd love to do is get into questions. We have people that have joined, which is awesome. So again, please feel free to, now that we're getting into the question territory of the podcast, please feel free to submit your questions in the live chat. Again, you're going to have to be logged in. I just realized that. I didn't realize that last week. Otherwise, I would have mentioned it. But yeah, log in, submit your questions. We're going to go through the questions that we got earlier this week that we collected throughout the week. And I want to start with the one that we got. I used to work with this individual, this is going back years and years and years ago, that I believe, well, Alyssa will read me the question. I'm going to butcher it, but let's get into it. So Alyssa, read the first question. I think I specified that it came from Instagram.
Yes. Our dog just turned 1 and still has issues with separation anxiety. We have worked our way up to longer times away from home and included high-value treats, but she still barks quite a lot and always lays by the front door for the duration of time we are gone. Any tips to work on that?
So, all right. And Alyssa, correct me if I'm wrong. Was there any crate in that question? Like any crate training? Okay. And it's for how long? Remind me. For when they're gone, for how long? Or the dog will just lay there and bark when they leave the apartment? Is that pretty much? Okay.
You want me to repeat the question?
No, I got it. No.
Okay.
So, all right. So basically for things like separation anxiety, okay, any form of separation anxiety, right? So what tends to happen, okay, and I'm just kind of, the separation anxiety is a big topic. So what tends to happen, right, is that when our puppies are very young, I mean, from a very young age on, and as they're maturing, a lot of times when we go to crate train our puppy, we don't get sleep, right? Because the puppy, either is not used to the crate, or most puppies, when they come from a breeder, they're kind of, they're in big spaces and things like that. So crate training is tough, right? And I get it. I mean, we've raised 2 Australian Shepherds, all right? So we know, I mean, raising puppies, is no small feat, okay? Getting to that point though, what happens a lot of times is people go to crate train and they do it out of good intentions because, again, crate training is highly valuable. I always say the more boundaries in the home, the better behaved the dog. But what starts to happen is a lot of people don't have the sort of mental stamina to deal with a puppy whining and barking until 4 o'clock in the morning or whatever it might be. Probably most people don't last that long. They just take the puppy out because they're like, I can't deal with this. I just have to get some sleep. And I get it, right? Okay, so he clarified 1 hour to 2 hours, but barking is immediately to clarify. Okay, great. That's awesome. All right, so I'm starting a little bit before that just to kind of get to the point. But okay, so what happens? Most people can't deal with the whining, the barking, and so a lot of times the crate just falls by the wayside. And look, I get it because, we all need to get sleep. And so, but what that does, all right, what that does is, we take the dog out of the crate, dog's whining and barking. We just kind of put the crate to the side and we're like, you know what? Let's just give the dog the whole apartment, right? I'm on track here, right? Mm-hmm. Let's just give the dog, the whole apartment and it'll be fine. Okay. And that was okay during COVID because, and I don't think it may or may not have been a COVID dog, but regardless, it doesn't matter. That was okay maybe because, people are working from home and so they're able to occupy their puppy. And so crate training wasn't really much a priority during COVID because, again, everybody was from home. Here's the problem though, that when you solve something like lack of the dog being able to exist in a small space, when you solve that with more freedom, it might work into the interim as a Band-Aid solution, but what starts to happen is the dog is always near you, right? And they get very attached to you. And so why is crate training important to bring this full circle? It teaches your dog healthy separation. And without healthy separation, what's going to happen? You're going to leave. Your dog's going to go, oh my God, mom and dad are leaving. And what do? I'm not used to this. And then that's when you start getting the barking, the whining, everything, because the puppy at a very young age never learned to sort of
disengage.
Never learned that healthy separation. And so that healthy separation has to be taught. So let me get to my next point, because that's really where a lot of this starts. And I'm not saying that this is where it started for this individual, right? But that's where it starts a lot of times. I would say like 90% of the time, that's what happens. Now, okay, so let's get to the next point, which is like, what do we do from here? So we can always dwell on what we didn't do and what we should have done, but I find that that's not great place to spend our brain energy, right? This is the problem and this is what we're going to do to solve it. Okay. Now, I believe the puppy is about a year. Can you,
Yes.
okay, so you can verify that. Okay, so year old, all right? You got a year old, all right? You got a lot that you can do now, okay? Here's the thing. When you are going back to teaching healthy boundaries, I would recommend this is you're going to have to start crate training. But not only that, and it doesn't have to be, it's just, it's a positive, right? So you're teaching the crate as a positive. Here's the problem though. I've worked with dogs that have severe separation anxiety at 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 5, 6, 7 years, 8 years of age. When the anxiety has already developed and ingrained itself, just making the crate a comfortable place is not going to do it. You might as well, all the YouTube videos and all the books that you're going to read on crate training, throw them out. Because it's not going to work anymore, right? Just throwing a Kong toy with peanut butter in there, not going to work. I'm going to tell you what's going to work. All right. A dog that's a year old, okay? You're going to teach them how to walk into a crate, okay? How are you going to do that? You're going to put a leash on the dog, all right? You're going to guide them in with a leash. Certainly, you can reward them for going in, and then you're going to come up with a release word like break. Okay, break, dog comes out. You're going to do that over and over and over and over again. You can say crate. Okay, dog goes in, good, reward, break, dog comes out. Great, goes in, good, reward, dog comes out. Do that a bunch. That's what you're starting to do, is starting to condition something that you can eventually hold accountable. Okay, so what you're doing is you're teaching a behavior, because once you teach the behavior, you can now hold that behavior accountable. Okay, getting to my next point, which is, okay, you've taught your dog how to walk into a crate. You've made it very clear that that's a behavior to be rewarded. Here's the problem with that, though. The second you close the crate door, your dog is going to lose. Maybe not. Who knows? But let's say hypothetically, you close the door, you walk away, dog loses their mind. Guess what? Having a Kong with peanut butter in there ain't going to do it. Having some treats in there ain't going to do it. You could put a porterhouse in there, and I can pretty much guarantee you that ain't going to do it either. What you're going to have to do is you're going to have to correct the barking and the whining. Oh my God, crazy. Correcting barking and whining. Yes, you're going to have to do that. Here's the thing, right? The anxiety is there. It's already ingrained itself. Dog's a year old, okay? You're not going to be able to do what you were probably able to do when the dog was a puppy, which is just kind of like just get them just used to it by like ripping the Band-Aid and just being like, no, you're sorry, you're just going to be in here. And look, I don't blame anybody, because like if I lived in an apartment, believe me, the dog would be sleeping in my bed if I didn't have a way to properly condition this. And with what I know now, I certainly would do what I'm describing, right? When the dog is older, you can actually correct barking and whining. So year-old dog, what you're going to do, you're going to certainly teach them how to go into the crate. And I would even go as far as teaching them a down command as well. So crate and then down. How would you teach it down? You can lure your dog into a down. Okay, so you're going to teach these words. Crate down, crate down, crate down, crate down. I want you to do this for maybe, I don't know, maybe do it for a handful of weeks, maybe a month, to really solidify what you want. You want the dog to go in there and lay down. And then what you're going to do is you're going to get the dog used to laying in there and laying in it down for longer and longer durations. Keep a leash on, all right? And I would start doing this when you're home, okay? So that when you have the time to really hold this accountable. Dog comes out, NOPE, you're going to say nope, bring the dog right back in again, all right? You're not going to allow the dog to just pop right out, all right? And that's the value of the leash, okay? No, you're not popping out, you're going back in, all right? And then if the dog settles and lays down, guess what? Good and reward, okay? So you're going to do a lot of this conditioning. Now, if you have to leave, and let's say you've done all this conditioning, you've made it very clear this is what you want, all right? And you go to leave and your dog starts losing their mind, okay? What you could do is you do a couple things. And I'm making it very clear that I want you teaching first before you do actually do any correcting. But here's the thing. You have a couple options. You can do a bark collar. Okay, I don't know how big the dog is. If it's a small dog, I would recommend using they have a vibration bark collar, which picks up the vibrations of the barking. Okay, so you could try that when you go to leave, so you don't get the barking and things like that. You're not getting notes slipped under your door. You could do an actual bark collar, but again, if the dog's under like 15, 20 pounds, I would actually start with something more of like a vibrate to start teaching, like, okay, I don't want you barking. And again, it will pick up on the barking, vibrate, barking, vibrate. What does the dog understand? When I bark, okay, there's something that happens that I don't necessarily like, and then it's going to stop, okay? You could also do it with an e-collar, a little bit more advanced. Eventually, we're going to have videos on this as well. You could also just correct it with an e-collar. Okay, I wouldn't have you rush to that though. Okay, I would probably lay it out the way that I just described. It's going to be a process and it's going to be a journey. Okay, if you determine that, okay, I think we need to go the e-collar route. Okay, yes, you can correct barking and whining with an e-collar. What do? You go to a low level. You make sure the e-collar, we use Mini Educator e-collar technologies. You use a low level to start. I'm a big fan of going low and then high. Dog starts, barking. Okay, wait for the bark or the whine. Okay, tap the button. Dog's going to look around. Okay, barking and whining happens again. Tap the button. Dog's going to look around again. Okay, what your dog is doing is your dog is connecting the barking and the whining to the feeling. Okay, bark, whine, correction. Bark, whine, correction. Bark, whine, correction. Guess what's going to happen? Your dog's going to stop barking and whining, not because it's anything earth-shattering, not because you just put a hole in your drywall because they just shot to the moon. None of that. What you're doing is you're saying, hey, I don't like that behavior. There's going to be a correction for it when you bark and you whine. Your dog is going to go, I guess barking and whining is not okay. And then they're going to lay down and they're going to settle. That's basically how that works. I am oversimplifying it just a little bit. Okay. So I can share some more resources on this, but I know that was a long answer to a not so easy question to answer in a very short amount of time. But main thing is, yes, you can correct barking and whining. Last thing I'm going to say, no, you're not making the crate a negative place. Okay. Here's the example I give to all my clients. If I get a speeding ticket on the road, I'm not going to be scared of the road. My behavior. Okay. I shouldn't have been speeding. Okay. That doesn't mean that I'm going to get in my car tomorrow and go, oh my God, I'm on the asphalt on the road. The road was the thing that gave me the ticket. No, my behavior was the thing that gave me a ticket. So no, the crate is just by correcting your dog in the crate, you're not making the crate a negative place. I want to make sure that's very clear because there's a lot of people out there that are trying to make it, oh, don't correct your dog in a crate. No, what they're trying to say is don't throw your dog in the crate and slam the door. Okay, yeah, that will make the crate a negative place. But teaching your dog how to walk into the crate and lay down and all these other things, and you're giving your dog the opportunity to succeed, and they're still losing their mind. All right, well, guess what? All right, you've exhausted your options. Dog's losing their mind. Correct the barking and whining. Be done with it. Dog's going to lay down. They're going to settle. Game is over. Okay, it's done. All right, what the dog's going to understand is, okay, crate is a fine place when I'm not barking and whining. What happens when I bark and whine? I get a correction. That's it. All right, so hopefully that was helpful.
I think that leads to the next question. Does my dog associate the crate as punishment?
It does lead into the next question.
Only if you make it.
Only if you make it.
If you're yelling,
Yeah.
if you're putting them in there while you're yelling at them and you slam the crate door, it's you have to use your.
Yeah, no, I mean, Alyssa's 100% right. If you throw your dog in there and slam the door, and here's the thing that kills me, right? Is that there are some people that would rather not correct the barking and the whining, but they'd rather yell at their dog, right? It is more effective and more fair to correct your dog with an e-collar or a bark collar than it is yelling at them and throwing and slamming the crate or something. It's ridiculous. So I'd much rather you create a very small amount of discomfort for a very short amount of time to stop something that I've seen people struggle with for years than yell at your dog. I mean, I don't know, right? Yeah.
I think the key word there is effective. You yelling at your dog constantly is not going to be effective.
And by the way, I'm not saying that this person that asked the question was doing that. I'm just saying we understand what it's like to get frustrated, and the owners that get frustrated are the ones that don't feel like they have the tools or the information to solve the problem, right? And so the goal for this podcast is to give that advice, the tools, so that you don't feel like when you're frustrated, and we're humans, we're emotional beings, right? We're going to get frustrated, but I'd much rather you use effective measures to correct behaviors than yelling at your dog or being like, oh my God, what am I do? And with Layla, I mean, there's many times where I was frustrated before we learned about e-collar training and balance training. And you feel like you're powerless and you don't have any options. And we get it. I mean, I get it. That's why we're doing this, so that we can help you out. So anyway, but yeah.
Okay. So next question. My dog constantly wants attention, and if she's not occupied, she barks and barks. How do I stop the barking? When I console her, she always seems to stop. Am I doing something wrong?
All right. So yeah, I mean, look, the consoling, I mean, we're actually getting, this is a very good question. So the consoling for the dog to stop, well, yeah, you're giving the dog what they want, right? And so dogs can be very, very good about getting what they want. I don't think enough people understand this, right? Dogs are intelligent. We do not give them enough credit. I truly believe we don't give dogs enough credit. We all say that dogs are smart, but they are, I mean, if you saw the things that we see, we have 5 dogs plus sometimes of all different breeds living with us. If you saw the tactics that we've seen dogs use to manipulate and your mind would explode. I mean, I'm telling you, your mind, that's why I'm a trainer, because once I realized that dogs were that smart, I was like, oh my God, I have to work with these animals. They're amazing, right? Dogs have taught me a lot. They've taught me a lot of patience. Alyssa can attest to this. When we were working in the city or even living in the city, I had very little patience. And dogs continue to teach me a lot about myself. And I think when you have a problem dog, you learn a lot about yourself. But getting back to the question, yes. Don't console. I'm getting better about this. Don't console your dog to quiet them for a moment. And people will, what they'll do is, like, if they're on a meeting and the dog like brings the toy to them just to get them to stop, they'll keep throwing the toy. You're just feeding the machine. All right. You're giving into what your dog wants. So what would we do? Okay. What we would do, this is a place situation or a down situation. You know, teach a place or a down command. Going back to the earlier questions, healthy separation. All right. So I understand why people do this, right? It's because they're like, I don't have an alternative method. I just need to get through this Zoom meeting. I get it, right? So what you have to start somewhere. And where I would start is start teaching healthy boundaries. I want you to go to your place and lay there. I don't want you coming and nudging me, okay? What you could do is you can actually put the raised cot next to you while you're hanging out, watching TV, whatever. Keep a leash on your dog, all right? Have them on place. Reward them for being on place. Reward them for being away from you a little bit. Okay. Start conditioning that. All right. Now, how to hold that reliable. Then you start getting into using training tools, prong collars, e-collars, etc. A little bit more nuanced topic. And I promise you, over the next couple episodes, we will be launching a community with videos. And I will actually be driving a lot of my answers to our community. We will have tons of free content to help all you. We're not going to keep everything behind a paywall so that we can actually show you how to teach some of this stuff. But that's what I would do. Yep.
Where should the prong collar be positioned on my dog? I've seen and heard a few different recommendations. Any tips?
Yep. So prong collar should be high on the neck. It should be just behind the ear line. I cringe when I see prong collars hanging like a Mike Tyson chain. And I'm sure you do too. Because now that Alyssa and I have gone, it's been years now since Layla's training, but I remember the first year of Layla continuing her training that I started noticing. I'm like, oh my God, we'd be downtown. I'm like, wait, that dog has a prong collar. That dog has a prong collar. You start noticing it more. And you start noticing how a lot of collars aren't fitted correctly, like prong collars being down here. And then the dog's like pulling on it, right? So prong collar should be high on the neck, just behind the ears. And it shouldn't be hanging low. If it's hanging low, you are going to lose all the effectiveness on the prong collar. And you're actually going to be moving your dog's upper body weight, which is not going to be effective. Your dog should not be pulling on the prong collar. It should be up nice and high, and you should be conditioning the prong collar pressure, release, pressure, release, pressure, release. Your dog should be responding to pressure in a form of communication. And the release of pressure is just as important as the application of pressure. So when you apply pressure in your prong collar, make sure you're releasing to let the dog know they're getting warmer. It's like a game of hot and cold.
And why would you recommend a prong collar versus a flat?
All right, so
collar.
So good question. So prong collar versus a flat collar. So, the flat collar, the problem with the flat collar is when the dog pulls on the flat collar, all the pressure is going to the front of the dog's neck. Okay, so, there's something called opposition reflex. So opposition reflex is you have a localized place of form of pressure. Dog is going to pull against that. You're getting into a tug of war match with your dog. So I don't like flat buckle collars for dogs that pull. I do like prong collars because it distributes the pressure around the neck, and you're not going to run into that as much, provided that you condition the prong collar properly. Mm-hmm. I also don't like harnesses because it actually it's not an effective mode of form of communication. And harnesses make it a little bit better for you when your dog pulls, but they're not an effective form of communication. All right. There's too many points of pressure on your dog. What I do like harnesses for is for like sports-based stuff, adventure-based stuff. You want to take your dog on a long hike? Yeah, sure. Put them on a harness. You want to take your dog on a boat? Sure. You want to have them on a harness/life jacket. Harnesses have a use case. Certainly. I'm not against harnesses. It's just you want to use the tool for the situation, or the circumstance. So, yeah.
Okay, great. My dog gets into everything. Tissues, slippers, you name it. How do I stop the urge from them grabbing things off the coffee table, etc.?
All right. Well, dogs that are jumping on the counters, usually that's a behavior that they've gotten away with time and time again. And so they're just going to keep doing it. And especially if some behaviors are self-rewarding. So dog gets away with it, right? So, some behaviors just become self-rewarded over time, and then the dog just builds the habit. So what would you do? I mean, look, you're going to have to, when I talk to owners about this topic, a lot of people will say, well, I'm not around when it happens. Well, now we're getting into the earlier discussions of crate training and boundaries and knowing where your dog is at all times.
What if you are around?
And if you are around, you're going to correct it. How do you correct it? Leash pop, e-collar. No, don't jump on the table. I mean, that's
sometimes
basic.
They can associate it with playing. Like they grab the tissue and you run after them. They think you're playing with them, right?
Well, okay, so we're talking about a couple different things. We're talking about counter surfing, which, yes, can be corrected. No, don't jump on the counter. Correct it. Be done with it. Okay, that's going to be my short explanation on that one. And then we're talking about dogs, like Alyssa's saying, like viewing it as a game, and then they're running from you. All right, so your dog goes in, grabs some tissue, whatever, runs from you. Okay, number one, yeah, obviously you want to get it out of their mouth. You don't want them to swallow it, things like that. This is where you have to start talking about strategy. Okay, your dog, you're going to want to teach a drop it command, maybe potentially an out command, because we've worked with dogs that will snag something and then guard it right afterwards. And so like teaching an out command, no, drop it and move away, because when I go to grab it, I don't want you to come under my legs and grab that thing, especially if you view it to be valuable enough to guard it. So it all depends on the context, but if it's just counter surfing, no, correction, be done. Dog's not going to counter surf. You want to stop the act that leads to all the other stuff. But going back to my earlier point, if you cannot monitor your dog, because that's usually when this stuff happens, is when people can't monitor their dogs, right? Or can't monitor their dogs. They aren't actively monitoring them. And so what the dog does is the dog just goes in the bathroom, grabs tissue, and just walks out. I would teach boundaries. Like, what are your boundaries, right? If I can't monitor you and I can't trust you not to get into trouble, there's got to be boundaries. We have to instill boundaries in the home so that you don't do that. And to take that a little bit further, I've worked with dogs that literally will this is not a common thing, but I've worked with dogs that will like chew. Like, I had a client a couple of years ago, the dog was chewing glass. All right. And they were trying to get glass out of the dog's mouth, and the dog was guarding it. Like, the dog was trying to bite them and they were trying to get the glass out of them. I mean, this just crazy stuff, right? Boundaries, extremely important for a dog like that. No, do not jump on the table. Don't grab I don't know what it was, like a glass bottle fell or something. The dog started chewing it. I don't know. But I mean, that's an extreme example, but like your dog can get something lodged in their, it's just not good. Right. So, yeah.
Okay. I want my dog to be friendlier to strangers when we're out and about around town. He won't let anyone come near me. It's in his nature to be protective, so maybe this is just how it is, but interested to get your take on this issue.
In his nature to be protective. Well, I mean, it's okay. Well, I don't know the breed, but I would like to talk about protection as it relates to this, because this is a very relatable topic, having a dog that has reactivity. So here's the thing. Dogs do not protect their owners. And I'm trying to work on how I'm speaking into the mic, so there isn't that. But anyways, regardless. So dogs don't protect their owners, okay? Unless they were taught how to protect their owners. Yes, there are breeds that are more prone to, like, their genetics. There's genetics there, livestock, guardians and things like that, and Aussies and herding. And I'm not saying that genetics aren't a thing, okay? But what I am saying is most of the time the dog is not protecting the owner. The dog is protecting themselves. The dog is protecting their space. The dog is protecting the area around them. Where are dogs usually when they're reacting? I'm looking at you. Where are dogs? And I'm not looking at you for a specific reason, but where are dogs when they're usually reacting? I mean, when we were going through this with Layla, where was she when she was reacting? Where was she conveniently positioned? This is kind of a rhetorical question, but I'll answer it. Dogs, when they're reacting, are conveniently positioned in front of us, right? So I can see why people go to the my dog is protecting me angle. But once you start understanding dog behavior and you start analyzing why your dog actually is reacting, it's not out of protecting you. They're either fearful of the approaching person. So what does the dog do? They start barking. What does the person do? They start moving away. Guess what? Dog just got what they want, right? What is the dog going to do? They're going to do it again and again. Why? Because it worked for them. Okay, it worked for them. So that would be fearfulness, right? Which would drive that reactivity. That's not out of protecting an owner. Okay, that's out of protecting themselves as a dog. If it's frustration-based reactivity, where some reactivity actually comes from frustration, okay, what's happening is the dog was over-socialized. What happens is they see their best friend. They can't get to their best friend because they're on a 6-foot leash. They get frustrated. They start barking. They start lunging. Okay, not out of protecting you. Nope, they're just frustrated. Okay, they're just frustrated. So the protection conversation has to happen. And I'm more than happy to have the conversation over and over again until this starts becoming commonplace. Yes, you can teach your dog to protect you. You can go to a protection dog trainer if you have the dog with the right temperament and the right breed. And sure, yeah, you can do that, right? But most dogs don't. This is like a metaphor, but most dogs don't just come out of the box protecting their owner. Okay, it's not how that happens, right? So now, I don't blame people again for thinking that, but we have to start thinking about why the dog is reacting, and it's an emotional thing with them and how they're feeling, and we need to start paying attention to those signs, and that's really important. So this individual, correct me if I'm wrong, Alyssa, she asked, how can I get my dog to be more comfortable? Is that correct? Was that part of the question? To be more comfortable with strangers?
Yes. Want my dog to be friendlier to strangers.
Friendlier
when
to
we're out
strangers.
and around town.
Yeah. So here's the thing. If it's out of fear, you work on your dog existing around their trigger. You're not going to force interactions. You're not going to have people come over to try to get them over this issue. Okay. That's not how you're going to solve their fear if they're fearful and reacting out of fear. You're not going to say, oh, I hope my dog starts liking strangers and I'm just going to keep having strangers pet my dog in hopes of them getting over it. They're not going to get over it. What you have to do is if it's coming out of fear, you have to build your dog's confidence. And how you're going to build your dog's confidence is teach them how to exist around the things that make them nervous. And that's where we get into our lead-in topic of how do we use basic obedience to help solve things like reactivity, although it's not the full solve for it, but you can use a downstay. If your dog is reacting towards people, guess what? Put them in a downstay, let people walk by them. Don't let people violate their space. Dog starts becoming more comfortable. And now you're using the down to help that comfortability. And that's going to happen over time. And so, yeah, the first time you put your dog in a down near a trigger, yeah, they're going to be a little bit insecure. They're going to be a little bit stressed. Next time you do it, a little bit less stress. Next time you do it, a little bit less insecure. And you're just going to keep doing it. And you do not want to force interactions. I want to make sure that's very clear. Forcing interactions is going to make this problem worse. All right, it's going to make the problem worse. Okay.
My dog chases after squirrels, rabbits, you name it. She also lunges at cars. Not all cars, but it's very unpredictable. How do I get her to stop this behavior? It's stressing us all out to the point where our walks aren't enjoyable anymore. Help.
Help. So, yeah, I mean, look, yes, dogs have prey drive. Dogs will chase squirrels, rabbits, etc. to the heart's desire. Okay. But, here's the thing. We have to be able to walk our dogs. We have to be able to get exercise and exercise them. So what happens a lot of times is there are no rules to the walk. And because we're like, oh, the walk, we want you to explore. We want you to sniff. We want you to, be at the front of us and, whatever, doing whatever you want. The problem with that becomes when there's no rules to the walk, what is your dog going to do when they see a squirrel? Guess what? No rules to the walk. I'm out of here. All right. So you have to start incorporating some expectations for the dog when you're walking them. Okay. There should be some heel command component there, teaching your dog how to heel, how to stay by your side. Okay. If you see the squirrel, all right. Okay. The heel's not necessarily in of itself going to solve the dog, not like to, hey, I don't want you to do that. If the dog is on the leash, I would be like, no, I need you to heel. And if you break your heel, that's a correction. If the dog is at a park and you see your dog take off, guess what? You know a come command. I don't know if this person's dog knows a come command. If not, I would have them teach one. You know that once the come command is taught, you know a come command. You're not coming back to me. E-collar correction. Dog turns around and comes back. All right. What's going to happen over time? Dog's going to see a squirrel, critter, etc. They realize that they got corrected the last couple times. Okay, not going to go after the squirrel today. And then you can keep your dog by your side. And the thing is, this is dangerous too. Again, I'd much rather you correct your dog for not listening to a come command or a heel command than your dog crossing the street and getting hit. I would much rather you do that. And there's not enough people talking about this. So anything to add to that? No? All right. I guess I'm doing better on this podcast. I'm getting stamps of approval all around, which is great.
Okay. This is the last question.
All right. Last question. Oh, we have some in the chat too. We're going to answer the chat questions. I promise you, we're going to get through those too.
Okay. My dog. Right.
Not really though.
What?
I said hit me. But give me the question.
My dog will bark out of nowhere. There's literally nothing around for him to bark at, and he'll just sit there and bark. We tried a bark collar, but it didn't seem to work. What are our options?
Well, all right. Well, this is a good one. I like this one. So bark collars aren't all made the same. So if you have, this is what we found too. If you have a dog with a long, like really long fur, there's really not a bark collar that's going to work for you. I mean, it's unless, the problem with bark collars, e-collars make wings like contact points that will actually reach through long fur. I don't think they figured that out with bark collars, at least from what I understand. So yeah, this could be that this person's struggling because of that reason where, that's a problem. Now, e-collar wise, the e-collar, you can get contact points, like long fur contact points, and it will reach. So sometimes what we'll do if it's like a barking problem, we'll try to correct it with an e-collar. But even more so than that, if the dog's just sitting there barking, I don't know if they're just hanging out in the front yard all day. I mean, we have dogs in our neighborhood. There's one around the corner that has a bubble built into the fence. It's kind of funny, but it's not funny. I mean, the dog is just sitting there just reacting, right, all day long. And there's a little bubble in the fence, and you see the dog doing this in the bubble. I think I posted that on our Instagram this past week. So if the dog's just sitting in the front yard reacting and barking, I don't know if that's the case here, but just sitting there barking, maybe the dog is probably not best to sit in the front of the yard. Maybe that's not the environment. Maybe they're just bored. Maybe they need something to do. Maybe they need, I don't know. I'll give an example. Do some other things with your dog. Keep them engaged. When dogs just kind of are just hanging around, they're looking for things to do to keep their mind going. You can get a snuffle mat, go on Etsy, search snuffle mat, get a snuffle mat, put a snuffle mat on the floor, hide all sorts of treats in it. Keep your dog stimulated, do some of these things, right? And, you might notice that by keeping them, again, like there's bad behavior which needs to be corrected, but also we need to start thinking about like, how can I provide my dog with some like things to keep their mind focused on? It's not just all correcting stuff, right? And I want to make sure that's clear. So, to get a snuffle mat, get your dog, make things a routine. I think that's what I'm getting to is make a routine for your dog. Our dogs really like the, what are they? The Himalayan cheese, the hardened cheese. We use that for Ash and Layla. They love it. They go nuts for it. But I'm not saying that giving your dog like Himalayan, like hardened cheese is going to solve your dog just sitting there barking, right? Barking to a certain degree needs to be corrected. But I think also it's just equally important to evaluate, like, what is my dog's routine on a daily basis? And, how am I engaging with them? How am I like one-on-one engaging with them? And also how am I giving them things to kind of keep their mind engaged and going? I think that's important too.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, great. All right. So let's get into the chat. All right. So all of you tuned in right now. So I'm going to give everybody the opportunity to go into the chat. We have a few questions already. So yeah, feel free to keep the questions coming. We are about 45 minutes in, which is I think what we were with episode 1. So we'll keep it probably around the same unless we get some more questions. So let's answer the first one. So you want to read the first question?
My dog loves to use her voice. How can I address frequent barking?
Oh, there we go. Well, that was kind of similar to the one that
Yes.
I just answered. All right, and I didn't even realize that. So hopefully that helped. Loves to use her voice. Well, here's the thing. There are dogs that are very vocal. Huskies are vocal. German Shepherds are vocal.
I think any dog can be vocal.
No, but what I mean is there are dogs that are more vocal
Yes.
than others. Yeah. So I mean, any dog can be vocal, but there are dogs that will be a little bit more vocal than others. And certainly, if you've seen Huskies on Instagram, yeah, they sing and howl and all sorts of stuff, right? So anyway, but how can I address frequent barking? I got into this on the first podcast, but helping your dog live in the green zone. So I talked about this on episode 1, like green, yellow, and red. So like the green zone, red zone, yellow zone, etc. Right. So if you can condition during the day your dog living in like a state of calmness, and I don't just mean like a calm environment, I mean like a calm mindset, right? So yeah, well, obviously, if a dog is not in a calm environment, it's going to take them longer to settle. But getting to my point, if you teach your dog how to like, okay, you were just outside, now you're inside, let's settle you for a little bit. Let's put you on your place. Let's bring you down to green zone. Maybe outside you were doing a little bit of barking and okay, fine. You got your fix and whatever. Now you're inside. All right. I don't want you barking out the window. I don't want you just generally barking. I have to get on a work call. Go to your place, lay down, relax, settle. I always say places like yoga for dogs. I think Alyssa probably remembers when I was doing yoga in the city, I was like the most relaxed person. It was the best. I love yoga. I don't have the time for yoga anymore. I love yoga. But yoga for dogs is like the place command, right? So I would try to, again, we're going to have videos on all this stuff soon. We will be launching our community soon. So we will be able to direct you to actionable guidance that you can watch videos on. But in the interim, teach a place command, try to get your dog to live in the green zone. And some of the things I mentioned earlier, snuffle mats, find something your dog loves, try to build a routine of calmness, and engagement with your dog.
Teaching your dog how to be calm, basically, is kind of what the place command does. Yeah.
All right. So yes, you can correct barking head on, but you can also get ahead of it and have your dog live in the green zone as much as possible. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to give an opportunity. I'm going to give a couple moments for any other questions to come in the chat box. If we don't get any more, thank you for tuning in. I cannot emphasize how much I appreciate each and every one of you. We are so fortunate to be here. We are so fortunate to be answering your questions. I don't take any of this lightly. I want to help as many, and we want to help as many people as possible. We know what it was like to struggle, and it's not fun. It's frustrating. Layla Damnair put us into therapy. Okay. So we get it, and we want to help you as much as we can. So thank you all. Thank you all for tuning in. Please stay tuned for the next episode coming to you Thursday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, streaming on YouTube. And we will always post reminders on our Instagram at HopeGablesK9. Thanks so much, and we'll catch you next time.